All right, so I have Judith here with me, and we're going to go over just a brief overview, Judith, of what you've been going through, what you came to me with, and what we worked through. So when Judith first came to me, Judith, you were working with a coach at the time. You're still working with another coach who's a phenomenal coach, and I love your kettlebell instructor. But you were having some more specific issues related to your movement. You had gone to a doctor, you got diagnosed with degenerative joint disease, which we discussed is kind of a blanket term, right? Mm-hmm. Like when you researched it, you're like, well, what does this really mean? Mm-hmm. You also got diagnosed with osteoarthritis, which is of course super common. And the doctor actually suggested that you stay more inactive, right? Like you couldn't obviously do what you were doing before when you were having this flare. You are also 70 and you've been training for a year like a badass with your coach, and he's taught you a lot. And like when you came to me, you were actually doing really well. It was just these really small, minute things that make a huge difference in performance and pain, because you were experiencing that pain. I remember that long message of you messaged me about that.
Right.
So you came to me because you wanted to prevent injury in the future.
Right.
And we realized a lot of different things going on, but one I remember you were struggling with muscle activation of the right places. So remember, you were very quad dominant, to use mostly your thigh muscles to do certain movements. You had some tightness in your thighs, I remember, and we needed to get your abs to fire on a little bit more. So very small things when you were doing your training, like it looks pretty good, but for somebody right with injury or a diagnosis with a low back pain or a joint disease, like that becomes more pertinent to really look at that. So did I miss anything on your backstory?
No, that's pretty much it. I really was kind of nervous about getting active again. Mm-hmm. And I felt like you explained a lot to me about the degenerative discs, as well as the action, not only when I saw you face to face, but from your posture workshop. Mm-hmm. I really got a lot of information about the mobility, as well as the mobility and stability of joints, and how important those things are in posture and movement. So when I saw you, you did an assessment. Mm-hmm. You saw several little things that you didn't only tell me about, but you got me to practice a position or engaging a particular muscle, or I really felt like you broke down some of these big movements into very small parts, so that I could begin feeling what it feels like to engage the correct muscle or to move in the proper way. As you mentioned, I guess the biggest thing was I overused my quads, engaged them in about every movement, and I my glutes were missing in action, so I've got my glutes back.
Awesome. Good.
You also did, this was in the posture workshop, we did some diaphragmatic breathing, which helps to tighten your core, and that's important in, everything, but walking, as well as, certainly the training movements that we do.
Yeah.
So, I felt like I got not just the verbal and informational explanation, but as some practice and tips for activating new muscles and new ways of moving. Well.
Perfect. Well, I like how you're saying too, like we're breaking it down into smaller pieces. I look at it as kind of like we're reverse engineering a pattern. So if it's something like if you had pain, with hinging or whatnot, right? Like reverse engineering that and working on, well, can you stabilize in this first smaller position?
It's like deconstructing the bigger movement.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. And being really aware of where you're feeling it. Like I remember in the bridge, we had you do a bridge where hips are coming off the ground and you almost completely felt it in your thighs.
Right.
First, bridging is a hip extension movement, which is using the glutes or the hip extensors. So yeah, we had to kind of reconfigure even how you were connecting to your muscles, which only really took a couple cues, right? Like I just had you concentrate and you were able to fire your glutes.
Right. And that really goes through everything that I've seen you do, Jess, and that is having that mindfulness and intention.
Mm-hmm.
And concentration on those smaller things make
Mm-hmm.
a huge difference, to the big picture.
Yeah, yeah. So one of my questions for you was, what was the most important thing that you learned? Would you say that that's it? Like that body awareness, that
Um, well, may I back up just a little bit?
Sure.
Because I think my first introduction to you was through your Facebook posts and the chats that you've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And what you cover there is all of the things that are beneath the nuts and bolts of training. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not nutrition, and it's not about diet. It's about our definition of strength and our level of self-acceptance and our lack of judgment toward ourselves, and having mindfulness and intention. So it was reading your Facebook posts, I think, that initially led me to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
There was one in particular that said, where you started out, you look best naked.
I
And
love that one.
I oh, sure, convince me of that, Jess. But you did convince me, because it was about shedding all of those things that we believe about ourselves and how we burden ourselves with, other people's expectations. And so being able to be naked with our vulnerability and authenticity, that was just such a beautiful thing to think about and to relate to, not just training, but to
Yeah.
everything. So that's one thing I've taken from you, is what's beneath the physical training. It's all those things that motivate and inform your training.
That's so good, Judith. Yeah, that's awesome. That makes me feel like I did a job well done.
Okay, a second thing that I certainly got a lot out of the workshop, and we did many things, physically, to demonstrate this is, the correct form and posture. But I noticed the other day, I was going into the garage to clean the cat boxes, the kitty litter,
Mm-hmm.
and normally I just go and get it done. But I found myself pausing to think, now, do I want to squat or do I want to hinge?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I hinged, and I did it with good form. And so it's not just about moving with mindfulness and intention when you're training or when you're in the gym. It's like how you move through life. And this too, I attribute to coming from you, Jess, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. That feels really good. And that's kind of the basis behind everything I do, is like, what is the intention behind it? Where is your awareness? I talk about mental, emotional awareness a lot, not being reactive, being proactive, and being conscious of where thoughts and narratives are coming from. But absolutely, like, that also has to do with the physical as well, like having that awareness of where your body is in space, right? And that's very protective, instead of just kind of haphazardly like bending over and picking up the cat litter or picking up a heavy box like that. Like, that's when injury happens and deterioration starts. So really what you're doing there with picking up your kitty litter with a beautiful hinge is preventative movement.
Exactly.
And that's really important, right? We talk about preventative healthcare all the time, and although our culture doesn't really support that, we know that's what really helps us a lot. So awesome.
The other thing I did right after the posture workshop, can you see?
You got your vitamins. I remember you came to.
I went and got those because I realized how neglectful I had been of my ankles, feet, and toes.
Yeah.
These have made a huge difference
Good.
with my balance, with the proprioception, and being able to see where I am, via my feet. And again, that I attribute that particular recommendation to you, and I appreciate
Thank you. I still have my toe shoes.
that.
Mine's are developing holes, and I'm like, I just don't wear shoes enough. Like I coach barefoot.
Yeah.
But I love the toe shoes. So awesome, Judith. I really appreciate you going through all of this, and I'm honestly very genuinely glad that we hooked up and I could help you. And yeah, cool. So I'm gonna sign off. But thank you again. And hopefully I will see you around soon.
Sure, my pleasure. I can't wait to see you again.
All right, see ya.